Hello, my name is Joe Foy. I'm National Campaign Director for the Wilderness Committee. We're a Vancouver-based environmental organization with offices in Victoria, Winnipeg, and Toronto. We work on behalf of our 60,000 members and supporters to protect Canada's wilderness and wildlife. It's fun work, sometimes it's tough work. Every year about this time, we put together a video which shows our campaign activities that we've undertaken on behalf of our members and supporters. The video you're about to see runs from roughly May 2013 until April 2014. Sit back. I hope you enjoy the show. This is our annual report. You can find it on our website, wildernesscommittee.org, or you can give us a phone call at 604-683-8220 and we'll mail one right out to you. You can find it in our wild vision, the reason we work so hard to protect Canada's endangered wilderness and wildlife. You can find about the campaigns that we've won this year, the wild areas we've helped to protect. You can find out about the organizations we work with in partnership across the country as we work to protect old growth forests, protect our parks, and the like. And of course, the communities that we work with, little small towns, big city groups, all across the country, out in the field, in the old growth forests, and the other wonderful areas of nature that our country has. We have our financial statement for you to see. Of course, we rely on the generous support of our members and donors. In May 2013, represented by EcoJustice, we went to court in an attempt to protect one of Canada's most endangered forests.
My guest is Joe Foy from the Wilderness Committee, and a very, I think, precedent-setting lawsuit against the BC government, accusing the government of not obeying its own law to protect endangered species. Explain the lawsuit to us if you can, Joe.
Well, it's all about a particular forest, which I think people will be familiar with. It's the forest that occurs on the southeast coast of Vancouver Island in the low elevation areas. So this is around Nanaimo, Victoria, Parksville, Qualicum. It's called the Coastal Douglas Fir Forest. And this is the forest, the kind of forest that Emily Carr painted several generations ago. It's beautiful forest. The problem is there's not much of it left.
Then a proposal to bring up thermal coal from the U.S. and export it via Surrey docks had us joining with partners to protect the Lower Mainland.
Tonight, the protests against coal. Environmental groups are up in arms over expansion of the Fraser Surrey Docks direct coal transfer facility. Do the environmental risks outweigh the economic benefits? That's issue that's straight ahead on Top Story.
Exposed to coal dust, it can lead to some pretty serious conditions. You've got the black lung, of course, for miners in the US, which is quite famous, emphysema locally as well.
In Vancouver, we gathered in front of Imperial Metals, AGM.
So we're here today to send a message to Imperial that their planned mines in Clayoquot Sound absolutely do not fit in this region. They're a full stop. We need a full stop. They just can't go ahead. The region's too precious. It has too much hope.
I like it.
The planned Cap-Face mine in Ahousaht territory and Fandora mine in Clayoquot territory would have devastating impacts on the water, which is the most critical element in Clayoquot Sound. If built, these mines could poison wild salmon and the rich ecosystems that they support, and in turn hurt the human communities that depend on the ecology in Clayoquot.
We discovered that too many private hydropower companies weren't following the rules.
These documents were obtained by the Wilderness Committee, and Gwen Barley, the policy director, joins us now to talk about this. Hi, Gwen.
Hi, Simi.
So tell me, what did you obtain?
Well, what I obtained just about 2 days ago was a memo, an internal government memo, that outlined the incidents of noncompliance at river diversion projects in British Columbia. And they've been pretty controversial over the last 10 years, but this memo was very, very surprising. And it showed that 90% of projects had had some degree of noncompliance up to September 2011.
Did you say 90?
Yeah, 90. I know. I couldn't quite believe it. I had it sort of underlined it several times.
In June 2013, we held a series of town hall meetings along the railroad line that would transport the dirty U.S. coal up to Port Metro Vancouver.
We're joined by Owen Madden. He is the climate change campaigner for the Wilderness Committee. We should also note that we invited representatives from the Coal Alliance to join us. They were unable to appear on the program tonight. Good evening, Owen. How are you?
Hi, Michael. How are you doing?
Good. Owen, first question. BC is already a major exporter of coal through a variety of ports on the BC coast. Why is this in particular an issue with you?
Oh, well, Michael, this is a very different type of coal to what we've already been exporting from BC. This is coal that's used in the generation of energy. We've always exported metallurgic coal. So the effects on our climate is enhanced with this type of coal. It is a new surge. There was never the large amounts of this stuff coming through our ports until quite recently. Suddenly now it's spiked to 9 million from very little back in 2007. That's a 9 million tons figure. So yeah, it's a new change. It's a case of an industry that's been pushed out of the US, targeting us here in the Lower Mainland because our environmental laws are just lax. They're not strong enough.
We produced a newspaper explaining how the government of BC's liquefied natural gas plans will rely on fracking to produce that gas.
For more on the environmental perspective on LNG, we're joined by Gwen Barley. She is the policy director for the Wilderness Committee. Hi, Gwen. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Are these two things compatible, environmental stewardship and liquefied natural gas?
Not the way the provincial government is proposing it. A lot of people aren't aware that over the last 10 years in British Columbia, that the BC government has cut the Ministry of Environment by over 50%. So we don't have people on the ground, we don't have biologists or hydrologists on the ground to watch out and oversee industry. And then the BC government right now is planning on a massive expansion. They're pinning their hopes on prices staying strong in Asia and to do massive exports of liquefied natural gas. That means that we're going to see an increase in fracking to get natural gas, unconventional natural gas.
And this is new technology and a fairly new industry for that matter. And a lot of the environmental, do people understand the environmental impact?
I'm not sure
Are there studies?
There's lots and lots of studies. And one of the biggest concerns, aside from massively blowing our greenhouse gas reduction targets, is natural gas fracking requires an enormous amount of fresh water. That they take the water and they blast it down under high pressure with sand and lots of toxic chemicals, and they fracture shale bedrock deposits to get at this unconventional natural gas. And so a single well, natural gas well, can use over 1 million gallons of fresh water, and we have thousands and thousands and thousands of natural gas wells. That in turn can contaminate groundwater. That we've seen stories throughout North America where people have actually lit water coming out of their pipes on fire.
We produced a newspaper about tribal parks in Taloquiet First Nations territory in Clayoquot Sound, and then we headed out there to help with trail clearing through these amazing ancient forested landscapes. We headed out to Mears Island in an open boat, and then we used hand tools like loppers and handsaws to clear away between the giant trees. In July of 2013, we headed north to the northeast portion of the province to see for ourselves the impact of fracking for gas on the area's lands and water.
We're here at a holding pond for all this fracking activity. This is where all the toxic water is stored once it's used underground. They force that water down there. About 80% of it comes back. It contains a mixture of chemicals and sand or ceramics. It's a toxic sludge. We don't even know what chemicals they use, but we know some of them are carcinogenic. Behind us you'll see that they try and keep the birds out of this water by sending cables across it, and also by letting off cannons behind me, which could go off at any point.
We headed over to the Peace River Valley to join in the campaign to stop the Site C Dam. This was the annual Paddle for the Peace.
This is one of the prettiest views of the Peace River Valley, I think, and we're looking down on a big hunk of farmland, a lot of which would go underwater, where the Site C Dam to be put in. Real shame.
We, of course, support our First Nations in standing up for our territories and protecting the land that has protected us for years and for generations. There is a diversity of people that have come together to protect our amazing environment.
Now, BC tells us that we need the energy to power the houses that are in BC. That is a flat-out lie. This energy is being created to increase the oil and gas development, to increase the mining, and to increase all the other resource development that's going on up here.
Of course we're going to protect the Peace River Valley the way that we protect our very lives. Let's paddle for the peace! See you on the river.
If the fall feels like forever.
Then it was back to the Lower Mainland to help protect the Salish Sea from becoming a superhighway for tankers and coal ships.
Well, I'm Owen and I'm the climate campaigner at the Wilderness Committee. And as you can tell from my accent, I didn't grow up here, and I've traveled a long way from where I came from to talk about climate change. Well, I chose British Columbia to talk about climate change for one very important reason. This is the most important place in the world for people to know about and to care about and to stop climate change. And why is that? Why is it here and not anywhere else in the world? Well, our local tar sands exporter, Kinder Morgan, wants to send 150 million metric tons of carbon into the atmosphere through its local pipeline here and onto large oil tankers. We have a coal expansion by our port, and it aims to make this the biggest coal exporter in North America, and that's another 100 million tons of carbon. And just when you thought things couldn't get any better, the British Columbia government turns around and says that our economic future hangs on putting out 200 million tons of carbon in the form of liquefied natural gas.
The Salish Sea is poised to become one of the biggest regions for fossil fuel exports in the world. It's sort of ironic, there's this place with so much history and so much hope for the future, and right under our noses it could become a climate change superhighway.
So when I hear someone say no to this and that they want a cleaner future here in British Columbia, when they say we're going to deal with climate change, for me I hear 100 voices elsewhere in the world, 100 Irish voices or 100 Chinese voices, all of whom cannot control this amount of carbon. We can stop climate change here in British Columbia if we choose to.
Then it was up to Williams Lake, BC to join with members of the Chilcotin Nation who were rallying in advance of the environmental assessment hearings on the proposed new Prosperity open pit mine at Fish Lake. In August of 2013, our Manitoba office was confronted with a proposal to ship crude oil up a rickety railroad track to the port town of Churchill, Manitoba on Hudson's Bay.
Tens of thousands of cars have crude oil move across our country by rail every day. But now for some living and working in Churchill, the idea of shipping oil by rail in northern Manitoba is off track. It's a route known for being scenic but slow. The tracks in northern Manitoba are better known for shipping tourists or grain than oil. Now, a letter-writing campaign to the provincial government is underway.
It's not a question of whether there will be an oil spill, it'll be when there will be an oil spill.
In September of 2013, we joined with other groups to call for the banning of neonicotinoids, a pesticide highly toxic to bees. We produced this 4-page color newspaper and distributed it widely across Canada.
Disappearing bees, and we've got these neonicotinoids, which are now the most widespread insecticide on the face of the planet.
Joe Foy runs one of 5 environmental groups asking Health Canada to reverse its recent decision to reapprove neonicotinoids. Health Canada hasn't responded to our questions. Earlier this year, the European Union severely restricted neonicotinoids to protect these pollinators, perhaps considering what Albert Einstein once said: if the bee disappeared off the face of the earth, man would only have 4 years left to live.
We headed up to the Chilcotin Plateau to Fish Lake to produce a video. At a Chilcotin Nation cultural camp, we wanted to make a plea to stop the new Prosperity Mine.
So I'm standing here today on the shore of Fish Lake on the Chilcotin Plateau. In the Chilcotin language, this place is Teltanbi. And all around us, we can see evidence that this very special place has been lived in for a long, long time, many centuries. Taseko Mines wishes to put a huge open pit mine right here at the outflow of Teltanbi, and above us here, just upstream from the lake, a couple of kilometers up from the lake, they want to build a massive tailings pond held back by a dam that is as tall as the Hotel Vancouver when it would be completed. Many people don't want to see this dam, tailings pond, open pit mine, and everything that would go along with it happen because of the great risk it would put this lake at and everything that this lake flows down into, which includes the Taseko River and the Chilcotin River.
In October of 2013, represented by EcoJustice and with partners, we went to court to protect BC's population of humpback whales.
So frustrating for the Wilderness Committee and for EcoJustice and other environmental groups. We have to take the government to court to get them to implement their own environmental laws.
But earlier this week, it paid off. The federal government published a legally binding recovery strategy designed to protect critical humpback habitat against threats. Among them,
so an increase in commercial vessel traffic and or a higher proportion of vessels carrying potentially toxic cargo would also elevate the risk of toxic spills.
Then there's the issue of underwater noise pollution and ship strikes. When you overlap a map of Enbridge's proposed oil tanker route near Gill Island on the central coast with a map showing critical humpback habitat shown in blue, you can see the problem. Now even the federal government is on record conceding that fact. What might this mean to the Northern Gateway project?
It's very difficult to imagine how major tanker traffic could coexist with humpback whales in the area around Gill Island, given what it says in this recovery strategy.
Good news for the humpbacks, but there are still over 170 species at risk the government has yet to protect.
In November of 2013, we joined in the debate over the fate of the Enbridge tar sands pipeline. The premiers of BC and Alberta had supposedly worked out a deal.
And for more discussion on this, joining us in studio is Owen Madden of the Wilderness Committee. Owen, thanks for dropping by tonight.
Hi, Jill.
The signing of this deal, and it's just a framework, but basically Alberta has agreed to BC's 5 conditions. In your opinion, does this signal that the Northern Gateway pipeline will happen?
There's a little bit of a pantomime unfolding here. You know, we've got this whole storyline, you know, are the premiers getting on well? Are we getting enough money out of this proposal? It's striking us off the main questions we should be asking about the proposal overall, which is majority of British Columbians do not want bitumen pipelines in BC. We can't lose sight of that and get dragged away into the sort of dramatic unfolding of a relationship on TV. To me, it's a purposeful distraction for everyone to bring us away from that massive opposition.
So are you saying that they staged this? They staged some disagreement and made a big deal about coming together on this?
Well, to me, the media is being fed this sort of a drama that's dragging us away from the real issues here. Okay, we've got massive opposition by First Nations. We've got a majority of British Columbians saying no to this proposal. We're supposed to be climate leaders, but yet we're building all this fossil fuel infrastructure. They're not the messages that are coming out in the media. What's coming out is this dramatic, a bit of a joke really. It's a drama which distracts, in my opinion, and it helps to get the proposals through without getting the real issues discussed.
Represented by Eco-Justice, we took British Columbia's Oil and Gas Commission to court. We alleged that they were not properly regulating the fracking operations' access to water. And then it was time for our annual general meeting where we all gathered to discuss the year's activities and to give out the coveted Eugene Rogers Award for superb environmental activism. This year it went to Ken and Arlene Boone. These are Peace River farmers. Documentary filmmaker Charles Wilkinson accepted on their behalf. December of 2013, we got bad news when Enbridge's Northern Gateway pipeline passed the environmental assessment.
Good evening. Thank you for being here. The Northern Gateway pipeline is a go. After months of hearings and protests, a federal review panel today approved the plan that would pipe bitumen from the Alberta oil sands to a tanker port on BC's north coast. There is a catch, though, 209 of them. That's how many conditions must first be met. The province hasn't jumped on board just yet, and the federal government still has to make the final decision next year.
There have been dozens of protests, major opposition from First Nations along the route, and environmental groups who today say they are disappointed but not surprised.
Our review process, our environmental review process here in Canada, here in BC, is flawed. If they'd actually listened to the thousands of people who wrote in, the several hundred people who made oral presentations, the overwhelming majority in both cases was against this project.
We conducted a photo expedition to northern Vancouver Island, the Kokish River, where a private power project was being constructed on this fish-filled stream. We had tried to stop the project to no avail. Then the Site C Dam environmental review started.
It's the most expensive and one of the most controversial mega projects potentially on BC's drawing board. And the public is about to get its chance to state its views when hearings on the Site C Dam begin on Monday. But dams can be controversial, and Site C is no exception, as there are concerns vast tracts of farmland could be flooded if the dam is built.
6,000 hectares of farmland, 100 kilometers of valley bottom. That's like drowning from Chilliwack almost over to Vancouver. It's a hugely damaging project.
And Joe Foy suspects the hearing process masks the fact that both levels of government probably favor the project.
So I think that all the way down the road, that both the provincial government and now the federal government are trying to railroad through this unneeded, unnecessary, and hugely damaging project. We got a call from Chilliwack from a number of First Nations and environmental organizations to come on out and lend a hand. So we did.
On a sandbar off the Fraser River, a rare gathering, 11 organizations representing First Nations, environmental and sports fisheries have united to oppose the location of a new hazardous waste recycling facility. The site would be located here at this vacant lot next to the Fraser River in Chilliwack. Approved unanimously by City Council, it will be used to recycle 5,000 litres of transformer oil and 500,000 lamps containing PCBs monthly.
We hear the people saying they're not opposed to recycling, to dealing with these materials, but for gosh sakes, not on the banks of the Fraser River. Then some members of BC's business community mounted a lobby to push for the new Prosperity Mine.
BC's business community isn't known for effective campaigning on certain issues. It lost the battle over the HST, for example. But today, a variety of interests came together to push for something that so far the federal government is pushing back on, the new Prosperity Mine near Williams Lake.
Our reason for being here today is to demonstrate
that the BC business community is firmly behind the need to approve this project and the significant economic benefits that New Prosperity will bring to the region and to the province.
But environmentalists who oppose the mine said today's gathering was meaningless.
We want responsible mining. We want mines that don't hurt the environment. We want mining companies to get along with the Aboriginal owners of the territory in which they operate. This project doesn't do any of those things. It wrecks our reputation. It's time to move on. I think this is a waste of time to support this project. In January of 2014, we once again discovered documents that show that BC's private run-of-river hydropower industry is not being properly regulated by the BC government. And then it was time to move. We had been in the same office in Vancouver's Gastown since the late 1990s. But we had to find a new location, and we did on East 6th Avenue. But it needed a lot of work, so people rolled up their sleeves and got to it. In February of 2014, the battle to stop the Kinder Morgan pipeline was really heating up.
Well, the war over pipelines is heating up. More than 2,000 participants have indicated they want to be part of the NEB hearings into Kinder Morgan. The $5.4 billion expansion project is one of the company's biggest, and it could be operational by late 2017. Joining us tonight for more on this is Owen Madden, climate campaigner with the Wilderness Committee. How are you, Owen?
I'm very well, Jill. Thank you.
Good. The deadline for applying for intervener status in this case has just passed earlier in February.
Yeah, 12th of February. It meant a very busy time for folks like me and other organizations. We went out and we decided to give workshops to people. The process to actually get involved this time was very different to the Enbridge Northern Gateway process, much more difficult in my eyes and for a lot of the people that tried to get in there. And we're very proud and stoked that 2,100 people actually came together over this, despite the challenges of getting involved. It shows a great solidarity in opposition. I fear that from a federal government perspective, we've bet the farm on oil and gas, which is good, until you get to the point where climate change is a reality and you're trying to sell the world's most destructive type of oil, the most climate changing type of oil. It's a bad business deal. So I think that there is a fear of large scale participation, and people are participating because of their realization our economy is at stake here.
Victory, not one but two. The first came in court where, represented by Eco-Justice, we and our partners won against the federal government. They could no longer delay putting in place endangered species recovery plans. And then the Federal Environmental Assessment Agency turned down the New Prosperity mines.
Has rejected a controversial mining project in the central interior for a second time. Ottawa has once again said no to the New Prosperity mine. The Environment Minister says Taseko's plan would cause damage that couldn't be mitigated. Taseko wanted to build the gold and copper mine at Fish Lake, which is not too far from Williams Lake. A special panel found the mine would contaminate the lake and destroy another, smaller lake used as a tailings pond.
Huge risk to water quality, huge risk to fisheries, huge risk to wildlife. There are better mine projects than this. This is perhaps the worst mine project that we've seen, and it's great that it's been turned down.
Taseko's VP of Corporate Affairs says the company is, quote, terribly disappointed. He says the company could reapply, but in the meantime, it's continuing with the court challenge of the federal panel's findings.
We produced a 4-page newspaper report outlining the reasons why the Site C dam should never be built. Working with environmental allies in British Columbia, we pushed back on a BC government initiative that would make it easier for heavy industry to gain access to BC's provincial parks. In March 2014, we celebrated the wonderful people that did the work making our move to our new location possible. We produced a 4-page information report about protecting Canada's one-of-a-kind Salish Sea. We widely distributed it across the country. Working with partners, we'd helped produce a series of videos about BC's endangered species.
Nothing else that looks like it.
We've had thousands of people come and see them. From all over the province, really. It's been actually interesting, and I was surprised the knowledge that people had of this species I've never seen before. And I enjoy it. I enjoy showing people. I enjoy that my daughter really likes the stuff that's here, and I hope it remains here.
In April of 2014, we got horrible news when the federal government reversed our court win by downlisting the humpback whale, making it no longer mandatory to protect its habitat. What a loss.
Protected as the creatures themselves.
So it won't be protected at all. And of course, the big concern is along with the Northern Gateway project, the pipeline, you're going to have tankers, oil tankers. And those oil tankers will be going right through the critical habitat, and that's the habitat that the humpbacks need to be able to thrive and survive. And those tankers will be going right through that habitat. And so one of the vulnerabilities of this type of whale is ship strikes and also oil spills. And so this was an impediment. The government looked at the protection of critical habitat as a roadblock to the Northern Gateway Pipeline project. And then lo and behold, today was the day actually the habitat was supposed to be legally protected, and instead they say no. We're downlisting it, and abracadabra, no habitat protection. Wilderness Committee will be definitely reaching out to our 30,000 members and our 30,000 supporters and other British Columbians who are dead set against this project, and telling them to speak out to the government and ask the government to listen to British Columbians. We realize what's at stake, and we don't want to see what happened with Enbridge and oil tankers, what happened with the Exxon Valdez.
Back at our offices on East 6th in Vancouver, we were finally fully moved in and enjoying a lunch together. We had great workspace, and we even had a really cool room to put our bicycles when we commuted in the morning. And then some good news. On Vancouver Island's Clayoquot Sound, the Colloquiet First Nation declared another brand new tribal park. Well, that's all for the video. Remember, if you would like to donate or volunteer, the Wilderness Committee is completely supported by our members and supporters. Start with our website, wildernesscommittee.org. That's wildernesscommittee.org.